Outlaw Law is brought to you by Whitaker and Hamer, attorneys and counselors at law. Your law firm for life.
You're locked into the Outlaw Lawyers. Josh Whitaker and Joe Hamer, your hosts. They are the managing partners at Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm. They're practicing attorneys here in the great state of North Carolina. Offices conveniently located in Raleigh, Garner, Clayton, Goldsboro, Fuquay-Varina, and Gastonia. I'm Morgan Patrick, consumer advocate, sometimes referee between Josh and Joe. Always an interesting conversation when we discuss legalese. If you've got an issue that you're facing and you've got a question and you need an answer, well, I've got a phone number for you, 800-659-1186. That's 800-659-1186. Leave your contact info, briefly what the call's about, and an attorney with an answer to your question will be calling you shortly. Again, you can also email your questions to the program, questions at theoutlawlawyer.com. All right, now we're going to go in which direction, Josh?
Well, Morgan, there were two pieces of legislation that came before the North Carolina Senate in the past week or so, and I think both of them are worthy of conversation. The first one that jumped to my attention was in North Carolina, we have officially legalized hemp, right? So the agricultural use of hemp has been legalized. There was a test period that the North Carolina Senate had approved a while ago. We were at the end of that. I think it was like 5 years or something, but we're coming to the end of that, and they went ahead and legalized hemp for agricultural CBD uses. Of course, this doesn't legalize marijuana or the use of marijuana in any way. That's still illegal in North Carolina as it is on the federal level. But hemp is legal, and I guess that's a step in the right direction. What do you think, Joseph?
Yeah, man, it's a step in the right direction. Hemp, I don't know that a lot of people realize, and maybe a lot of people do realize, but the sheer volume of benefits and uses for hemp is like mind blowing, man. Like it would really, I think it would really blow your mind, especially if you're not well versed on the subject. Just the sheer number of applications and things that hemp can be used for, things that it can replace. It's really crazy. And, you look at it, I think we probably have a more, and again, we try not to really give a lot of insight into our own personal beliefs, but you could probably gather from just our general discussion about the topic of marijuana in general, we probably have a more relaxed view than some do as to how that should be treated, whether it should be legalized in some fashion. But it's very difficult to look at hemp and look at what it can do and the applications and things like that, and then make an argument why it shouldn't just be legal, I
always take a real libertarian type stance on something that's criminal. When you decide to make something criminal, why? Right? That's I think that's kind of a libertarian take on anything you're making illegal. Why is that illegal? Why are we going to spend resources and put people's life at risk to enforce laws to make this illegal? Why is this so dangerous that it needs to be illegal? And obviously, I think the answer, especially for just hemp, is that 100% should be illegal. Like, I don't know that you can find any justification that hemp as an agricultural crop should have ever been illegal. And I know we inherit some of these things, right? We inherit the way things were in the 1910s, the 1930s, 1950s, and it takes us a while to clean up. But I think anytime someone's telling you something needs to be illegal, your first question should be, why should that be? Why should that be illegal? So here, hemp, obviously, I think everybody's on the same page. But it was funny. It wasn't funny, but NC legislation, when this came up, there's a Senate bill that would make some level of medicinal marijuana legal in North Carolina. And so it looks like that hasn't been looked at in a while, but it looks like that's going to come up this week again and could reach the Senate floor this very week. And again, it'd be heavily limited and heavily regulated, but it's, again, a step in the right direction, because at some point, I think you have to ask yourself, why is marijuana illegal, especially now with so many states having approved it? What's the point? What are you trying to prevent? What's the government's aim in keeping people from owning or using, marijuana as why draw the line there?
Yeah, and exactly. And I mean, that's a whole other issue. I agree with you completely. I think, most folks who have done the research and looked into it would agree with you completely. It makes perfect sense. But, even if you did make an argument that there should still be an outright prohibition of marijuana itself, medicinally or recreationally, how do you extend that argument to hemp? That's really where I just don't see how you do it. And the reason why hemp was illegal at one point, and again still is in some ways, is because it's tied to marijuana. But it's a different thing, related but different. And if you just look at the sheer, not even including like the health benefits of like CBD oil and things like that, which, research would suggest there's a lot of benefits there. Take that out of the equation and you just look at industrial hemp uses. I mean, I think it's mind blowing the number of things that hemp can be used for and can replace, and do it in a more environmentally conscious way. Like there's a wealth of uses and a wealth of benefits that it's almost insane to me that it hasn't been permanently legal prior to now.
I was talking about that stance you take. Anytime somebody says you can't do anything, anytime someone says hey, this should be criminally illegal, you should always ask why is that the case? And that's what my kids do, right? Anytime I ask them, like, hey, you got to go to bed, right?
Yeah,
why can't I watch this? Why can't I watch this movie? Why? Right? And then
they're going to go into the profession, I think.
and when you really have to spell it out for them, sometimes they win, right? Sometimes I'm like, why can't I watch this movie? I don't know, it's violent. And they're like, but will you let us watch this movie? And it was violent. Yeah, all right, fine, just watch it. Just fine. But yeah, we should always be asking those questions. And sometimes, moving slow is not a bad thing. I have to tell people that too, like, especially when we talked last week about the school shooting and obviously the kind of visceral responses both sides of the debate on guns had on that. Quick action is almost never the answer. Everybody needs to take time and reason through things. So I don't want to criticize NC lawmakers too much, but at some point, you're moving too slow. So it seems like this was a good decision. Hopefully this medicinal marijuana bill will pass. I think that's the way to go. That's almost every other state. I always tell people, if one day North Carolina will legalize recreational use of marijuana, but I may not be here. I may be dead and gone by the time they do that. We'll be like the last state, maybe us in Alabama, to actually legalize it. But it's going to happen one day. It's inevitable because society's just kind of changed their tune pretty quick on how they feel about that kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree, man. That's a bold prediction, but I think it's a very safe prediction. If you look at the trajectory of how marijuana is viewed, societally, you'll see like I don't know I don't see what pushes us back. Like, I don't know what could come out that would cause a reversion of this, kind of progression of thought. So I think that it's inevitable, and so what do you gain? What is gained by continuing to prohibit it in the way that it's prohibited? Like, that's the question you got to ask yourself. Like, just like your kids ask, like, why should it be illegal? Why can't it be? What do you gain from it not being legal, really? And I think it's a difficult question to answer.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of clear cut things. Murder should be illegal, right? Theft should be illegal. And, those are no brainers. But I think there's a lot of stuff in the criminal code. Maybe we'll do that one show. We'll crack open the North Carolina criminal code and kind of pick out some things that are illegal that might be a bit antiquated or maybe need to be revisited. But that might be they did that in The Simpsons one time. You probably didn't see that one. But
I didn't see it. But that sounds like a rocking episode to me, man. I think
ding, 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 ding. There's
that
our
sounds like
Simpson.
A real barn burner.
I was going to say, there's our Simpson reference for the show. There you go. Ding, ding, ding.
They were reading there was this episode, they were reading the charter, the town charter, the Springfield town charter. And it had male ducks had to wear pants. It was like one of the old laws that was still on the books, But I bet we got some of those in North Carolina. Somebody's probably already done that. I just haven't seen it. But maybe we'll dial that up one week.
I just like that idea in general, man. Like, I think that should be what the show is now. It's just we just read statutes just as slowly and as monotone as we can. We just read statutes, and that'll only appeal to the real purist out there, the real
Right.
the real
I think
legal purist. But we'll be making
think-
those guys happy.
I think our audience might dwindle after a couple of weeks. Maybe they'd wait for us. Like maybe Josh and Joe will come back and they'll talk about something fun, and then just like
Or
week 3, we're
maybe they
still...
love it. Maybe everyone loves it, and the show takes off to a new stratosphere.
The other piece of legislation that's getting a lot of attention is, and again, I've seen it called different things. I'm gonna call it the NC Parents' Rights Bill because that's what I've seen it referenced as to the most. But we got some legislation here locally in North Carolina that is very similar. We spent some time talking about the Florida bill that got named. The media kind of named it the "Don't Say Gay" bill. And so we spent a while talking about that one. The NC bill is a little bit different, but it has some overlapping provisions. It's again depending on what side of the ground you stand on. Some of the bill's provisions might seem overly difficult, overly hard. Some of them I think make sense. I think this bill, like the Florida bill, has they don't want any sexual type instruction, gender type instruction in schools for kindergarten. I think it was through the 3rd grade. I don't have it in front of me, but I don't see anything. I don't see any problem with that. I have a 2nd grader. I don't want that 2nd grader personally spending a lot of time talking about anything sexual in nature or gender in nature. I personally, again, I don't put a lot of personal opinions out here on the show, but I do that just to point out that some of this bill seems to be reasonable when I just read it arbitrarily. But this one, it really depends on your personal leanings and your personal beliefs on what's true and correct and how you want to raise your kids. And anytime that's the case, man, that's a lightning rod for legislation or anything like that.
I agree, man. This is a real lightning rod. And I will say, this, not commenting on the substance of this bill, not commenting on, the goals and the aims of this bill, strictly commenting on the catchy name factor. I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 10 in terms of coming up with a cool name for this bill.
There's some other things in there that draw more objections. So of course, it's got a provision just to alert parents to a lot of different things that might come up as a kid gets older. So if they want to change their pronouns, I think that was mentioned in there. If they, there's a medical issue, a mental health issue that might come up that's related to gender, they want that reported to parents. And so again, depending on which side of the debate you fall on, that's perfectly reasonable or incredibly objectionable, right? So it's no, civilized society is a series of measured compromises. And at some point when we can't compromise on, we have off limit topics or topics that are so divisive, we can't civilly discuss them, then little parts of society start breaking down, when we can't talk to each other and come to some sort of compromise or some sort of agreement that everybody can live with, and we have some problems.
To me, you talk about, when you talk about notifying parents of certain things that involve their children, like to me, that seems perfectly reasonable. And you can almost be like, well, I can't, what's the argument? What argument could be made against that? And then I guess you have to remember, like, not every parent-child relationship is that of mine and my kids or you and your kids. And, I guess they're, as sad as it is, there's some parents out there that don't necessarily have the best interest of their kids in mind. There's some unhealthy relationships there. So I guess that's a piece of the puzzle. Some of this stuff does, like you said, it does seem fairly reasonable. But it's a lightning rod. And whenever you have that lightning rod, you've got, there's two sides of that coin, and both are usually equally adamant about their own position.
Yeah, everything I read, described this as Republican legislation. I think Governor Cooper came out against it, and so it sounds like maybe, I don't know that he said this, but it sounds like I'm guessing just by his statement. Again, I'm making a leap of an assumption here, but he would veto it maybe if it came to his desk, and so I don't know what in the end the point is, but you definitely have some parents, who are involved in their kids' lives who, and I think somebody got interviewed and made a good point. They have to sign a form and call the school for their kid to get like antacid, like over the counter medication. I know, like we, at our school, our kid uses inhaler, and there was like all these documents to fill out so he could use his inhaler. So
It's a big
to-
problem, man. Those kids these days snorting Tums, man. That's a new
so
thing.
you have to go through like just all this stuff for like simple stuff, and then if again, I don't know what the situation would be, but if a kid goes to a guidance counselor or something, is having maybe some mental health issues or some struggles with sexuality, and that not to get back to the parents, that seems at least as important as Tums, right? At least So I think both sides have good intentions on this debate. They want kids to be able to figure themselves out and not to, again, if they don't have a good relationship with their parents, I see both sides, but in the end, when you read this bill, it doesn't sound unreasonable just to read it. Now, how it gets applied, and I think when we talked about the Florida law, that was our, it wasn't drafted really well. How will this get applied? It didn't make a lot of, it didn't. There was going to be a lot of legal problems. So from an attorney perspective, we saw a lot of problems with it. And this bill has the same issues, But anyway, I guess it's neither here nor there. We're not part of the North Carolina Senate. Me and Joseph don't have a vote, but we just like to talk about these things for the sheer joy in talking about legal.
Well, I was going to say,
news.
I was just going to say, you're both parents, and a lot of our listeners are parents, and they're facing these same issues. So, it's an interesting conversation. I'm sure it's going to come back up on the program. I want to remind everybody you're listening to the Outlaw Lawyers, Josh Whitaker and Joe Hamer. They're the managing partners at Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm. They're practicing attorneys here in North Carolina with offices in Raleigh, Garner, Clayton, Goldsboro, Fuquay, Varina, and Gastonia. If you have a legal question you need an answer for, you're in a situation possibly, here's a phone number for you, 800-659-1186. That's 800-659-1186. Just leave your contact information, briefly what the call's about, and an attorney with Whitaker and Hamer will be in touch. And you can always email your questions to the program. We'll answer them on future programs. That's questions@theoutlawlawyer.com. Speaking of, we got some questions coming up on the other side. Stay tuned. You're listening to The Outlaw Lawyers.